You're listening to episode 134, Empowering Yourself to Change Your Future with Rhonda Cimorelli. Welcome to the Grass Gets Greener podcast, the show for survivors by survivors. I'm your host, Melissa Wilson, a bullying survivor and anti-bullying advocate. And each week you'll hear from a survivor who has overcome a traumatic experience to go on to not only survive, but thrive, so that you can too, starting now. Hey there, welcome, and thanks so much for tuning in to this latest episode of the podcast. I'm so grateful to have you here. And today we're going to be joined by a new guest. We're going to be joined by Rhonda Cimorelli of A Balanced Life for You. And before we get into it, I do just want to mention that today's episode is sponsored by Navni. Navni is the top-ranked anonymous writing website in the world. Navni provides free wellness resources and low-cost online therapy services to help people cope with various levels of emotional distress. Write anonymously, feel better at novni.com. So Rhonda is joining us to share her story and how mindset and perspective have helped her in her healing and how we can empower ourselves to create the future that we want for ourselves. And in particular, Rhonda is going to talk about a terrible automobile accident that she was in when she was a senior in high school, and how even though she had her share of struggles growing up and suffered with low self-esteem, it was the accident that was most impactful for her. And she'll talk about the physical, mental, and emotional effects that she suffered from it, and how she fought for her recovery after the accident. And we'll talk about the power of our beliefs and how we have the ability to change our future, and we don't have to accept everyone else's truth as our own. And we'll talk about why it's so difficult to get out of a victim mindset and some things that we can do to do that. And we'll talk a lot about perspective as well. And Rhonda will also share what a balanced life means for her and why balance is necessary. So lots of good stuff in here, and I think you're going to find it to be a really inspiring episode. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into this one, and I'll go bring Rhonda on. Rhonda, welcome to the podcast, and thank you for joining me here today to share your story with us.
Thank you, Melissa, for having me. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So you and I connected earlier this year, and you were telling me a little bit about your story, and I definitely wanted to have you on here to share with my listeners as well, as I think they'll be inspired by your journey. And I love the mission you have, which is to empower women across the globe by enabling them to refine the balance in their life and to reclaim their personal identity so that they can love their life and not just live it. So, Rhonda, what I like to do is start with your story of what you experienced and how that affected you, and then we'll go from there. Does that sound okay to you?
Oh, that sounds terrific. Yeah, thanks for allowing me a chance to share this story. And thank you for sharing that mission first, because who I am and what I do now really does have a lot to do with some of the experiences in life, and that's really what happens to all of us. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I would love a chance to share is, as a teenager, most of us have been a teenager at some point in time, and maybe even a senior in high school. And that's really where this experience took place. I was a senior in high school. And at the time, I considered it, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. I was a passenger in a truck going down a windy backwoods kind of road. And before I know it, we hit a tree head on. And just to kind of give you an idea, so, 17 years old, senior in high school, right after my birthday. And when I woke up, I saw flames. I couldn't get out of the truck. The driver was knocked out, scared to death, because, again, going back in the 80s, the only thing I ever knew about a vehicle being on fire was it was going to explode.
Yeah, that must have been very scary.
It was petrifying. It was awful. And I couldn't wake the driver up. What ended up happening is I remember little bits and pieces of being transported from, the paramedics to a hospital, to another hospital, and eventually to my third hospital. And Now, most of us as teenagers have either experienced glasses or braces or sometimes both. I was the kid who got to experience the braces prior to this wreck, and I had only had them off about 6 months. And when I woke up in the hospital, I couldn't speak because my front teeth were sitting in the roof of my mouth.
Oh, no.
And that was very alarming. I'm not really sure which part was more alarming, the fact that I couldn't see or the fact that my teeth were in the roof of my mouth.
Mm.
So just to kind of, give that idea of this was a severe auto accident. And what ended up happening was, I crushed my face. I broke everything in it except for my lower jaw. And as a result, I ended up having extensive surgeries. And one of the first surgeries I had, again, just picture yourself being 17 years old, was I had facial reconstruction. And when I woke up, my nose had been packed for reconstruction, and my mouth had been wired shut, and I had a tracheotomy. And that's how I hung out for several weeks in the hospital,
Wow.
trying to figure out how to breathe and how to eat. And it was this experience beyond nothing I've ever had. So kind of that, what I just want to say about that is for anybody listening, if you've had any kind of very traumatic experience and a lot of pain, and when you go to the doctor's office now and they ask you your pain level, on a scale of 1 to 10, always make sure you're your best advocate and go, you know what, I will never, ever be at that 10 again. So let's just put this in perspective of where our pain level is. So anyway.
Wow. So, yeah. So it's like just one day. I mean, sounds like, this major traumatic thing happened, and I'm sure it impacted you in so many ways. What was life like for you up to this point?
Up to that point, I wish I could be the person who said, oh, my life was great, and I was an athlete, and I was a cheerleader. Well, not so much. I had already had my life of experience with, being bullied and being not running with the right crowd because I never felt like I fit in. But I have to say, the car wreck really, in a split second, changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
It really changed the way I looked at life. And what also really happened from that was I had to take a new perspective of what I was going to allow my life to be like. When I was in the hospital, I had people telling me, oh, it's okay if you don't finish high school. Oh, it's okay if you don't do that. I mean, I almost lost my eye. And I would have all these people telling me, oh, it's okay, it's okay. And inside, my gut was going, no.
You didn't want to accept that.
No, absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting because prior to the car wreck, I didn't have a lot of self-esteem or self-confidence. But somehow having somebody tell me it's okay that if you can't do all these things, something inside me said, nope, I just can't accept that. It's not so.
Mm-hmm.
I was very determined to walk again. I was very determined to be able to see, to the best of my ability again. I was determined to graduate high school. And I did. I showed up in a wheelchair and then crutches and then had to change my schedule all around. But lo and behold, I did manage to, I graduated. And
And
I
that
had
belief is
major.
what, yeah, sorry, go
What's
ahead.
that? No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, that belief is what makes all the difference, right? I mean, you can believe that you can still do these things, that you're going to get better, and focus on that. And then, and as you were saying, I mean, you were able to do that. But if you kind of believed what these people were telling you, and you allowed yourself to go, fall into that trap and go down that path, then who knows what your life would look like today, right?
Exactly. It really is. Everything that happens to us it's not necessarily the experience or the event that happens. It's the meaning that we give it and what we accept to be true.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, I could have accepted that I have been severely, severely damaged and I will never again walk right, or I will never again see very well. I could really accept these as fact, but I didn't want to.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't. And
You
because
could
of
have
that,
really,
now.
yeah, you could have really played the victim role, and
Absolutely.
That would have really hurt you.
Absolutely. And you bring up a really good point because so many, people that I see now and talk to, that's where I find most people still struggle is they play the victim role. And it's, not my fault. And, funny that you should say that because for the longest time, though, I'm going to tell you, as I said, I was a high school student, a senior in high school, and I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and I was a passenger. So technically, I was a victim, right? Because I wasn't in control of the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
So I kept blaming this person for nearly killing me for the longest time. And I played the victim role in that sense, but I really expanded it to the point where everything that was wrong in my life was all because of this accident. And after years of doing personal development and mindset work and working on myself, I came to realize a very powerful mindset shift for me, which was the fact of the matter is I was in the wrong place at the wrong time because I made a really bad decision that day to skip school. And so when I figured out that, I'm the one that actually made that decision, and that decision put me in that situation. So yes, I was a victim in the sense that I was a passenger, but ultimately it really is because of me. Because I made that decision. I could have made the decision to stay in school that day and stay exactly where I was supposed to be, and who knows where I would be right now.
Yeah, well, we never know what's going to happen. And like you said, I mean, it's about, the meaning that we give to it and how we respond to what happens.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, Rhonda, share with us more about the ways that this did impact you after it happened.
Well, that really has many, many layers. I mean, there's the obvious physical aspect of it, having multiple surgeries, a lot of back pain, just a lot of physical stuff that continues. I'll be honest, it's like a residual effect for 30 plus years now. And then, of course, there was the mental and emotional pain and struggle because I did disfigure my face. And, you're talking about a girl who, as girls, we all want to be and feel pretty. And ultimately, all we really ever want in life is to be liked and loved and accepted by others. But I always felt that because of these lacerations and these scars, and the fact that I had to have braces on again, I felt like people were always laughing at me, always making fun of me. And I can remember going out with the one or two friends that I had, and we would, girls put on makeup, and my one side of my face had been so crushed and swollen a lot of the times when I would wear mascara, it would smudge. But again, I didn't know really good makeup either back then, but it would smudge. And, if I didn't have my best friend with me to go, hey, fix that in a nice way, people probably really would have been making more fun of me. So there was that aspect of just, it exasperated my low self-esteem. I guess that's the best way to put it. And I'll be honest with you, probably the best gift that I was given in life with this situation is prior to the car wreck, I had met a boy who took a liking to me. We dated a little bit here and there. And right before I went to my senior year, he had left for the service. And he was at the time over in Germany. Well, he ended up coming home to see me right after this wreck and took it upon himself to actually shower me with, this love and appreciation, and always made me feel pretty, And I actually talk about this guy in my book because he's actually my husband now. And he was really a driving factor of how I was able to actually overcome that mental and emotional, that lowest self-esteem, because he never treated me any different and always made me feel the way I wanted to feel, good about myself.
That's so important.
Yes, it is. So those were just some of the, physical, mental, emotional effects of having such a traumatic experience. And not to mention, it did not help that we got married pretty quickly and I had children right away. So I had my car was 17, and 2 years later, I had my first child. And it was quite interesting because my physical self was not really, really healthy. I had never really recovered from the injuries. And then you have a pregnancy on top of it, and then all these other things. So it made it very difficult early on in life having children at a young age because my doctors were always trying to put me on all kinds of medications.
Mm.
And those medications would make me very tired, very sleepy. And it really made it difficult to be a really good, attentive mom at times. So that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like that was a struggle for you because you were still, suffering the effects of what you had gone through and trying to heal from that.
Yes, absolutely.
So I know, we were talking about how, you had that strong mindset when you were, in the hospital. Um, did that sort of continue, as you, were out of the hospital and were struggling with the aftermath of it? Or what did it become difficult for you at times to kind of keep that positive mindset?
It's funny. Well, I'm really glad that you asked that because just the other day I was having a conversation with someone and we were discussing different events that have happened in my life. And apparently I didn't realize it then, but no, the mindset really did stay with me in so many ways. Here's a good example. When I was a younger child, I remember looking at other women in the family, and they had what I always called it the mommy tummy. And my sister and I were like, "Oh, when I grow up, I never want to look like that." And I didn't know it, but I was actually training myself at a very young age of a mindset of what I would allow to be truth and what I would accept in my life and what would be a fact. And fast forward, 30 years later, 4 children, 4 cesareans at that, and no mommy tummy to be seen. Um, to have challenges as a teenager with weight. I said I had the low self-esteem, and I was never heavy, but I did, go up and down, and I was larger than I am now. And came to a point after I had my children. We are told, and we accept the fact that as we get older as women and we have children, it's almost expected that you gain a little weight, you look a little fuller, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because we're told that, well, that's just kind of how it happens, so that's what it is. And we accept it, so therefore we fall into it. And we as women go, well, I've had a couple kids, I'm supposed to be, 5, 10, 20 pounds heavier, a couple sizes bigger, but that's just how it is, right? We're also told that, about the time you hit 40, it's normal. Your eyesight starts going. You have to start getting glasses. That's just the way it is. So about the time we hit 40, we have an eye exam, and they go, well, you can use little glasses. And we go, yeah, I know, I'm 40 already. Good grief. So we just accept it as is.
Mm-hmm.
But really, it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
Because if we really understand our bodies and our mind and the science and how we actually are built, we are constantly renewing skin cells and body parts. So really, there's no reason why we have to be older. We don't really have to gain weight. We don't have to really have bad eyesight.
Yeah, there are so many of these thoughts, these beliefs that are out there, that it's so easy, to kind of just accept as truth if you're not, questioning them. And if we take the time to stop and question some of these things, we can actually, affect our future and not have to go down those paths. We can choose how we want to be. We can be better than what these ideas or whatever are saying that is kind of our destiny,
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, that goes with, stop, and forgive me for saying this, but, we don't have to follow the leader all the time.
Right.
Just because everybody else in your crowd has decided that once they have kids that they're going to be 20 pounds heavier than they were, and just go, oh, that's just the way it is because I've got kids. That doesn't mean you have to be. It's a choice.
And if you believe that, then that is what's going to happen, because you're not going to be taking any other actions to make it any different.
Exactly. So yeah, okay, I'll make the choices to go along with it. I'll accept it because you're right, it is. But it doesn't have to be that way. It can be any way that you want it to be, which is kind of how I ended up with what I do now. I teach women how to design that life, to be empowered and truly love it, not just live it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's amazing to find out that we do have more control than we realize. And I think it's such a great thing. It is so empowering. And to be able to take back that control of your life, and make it into something that you feel really good about. Such a great thing.
The other thing, if I could just share with anybody listening, is to realize that life happens. Stuff happens. And it's, again, not what happens, it's what we decide to do with it. And we have a choice every single day to either continue to stay stuck in that place of turmoil and chaos, frustration, right? Or we can decide, I don't like feeling this way. I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to behave this way. And make those decisions and make those shifts, take different actions. Something as simple as, I think everybody who listens to your show can relate to this. You drive a car, yes, Melissa?
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever been in traffic, a lot of traffic?
I was in some yesterday.
Well, let me ask you this. Have you ever been in a situation where you're just kind of driving down the road, minding your own business, and somebody cut you off? Really cut you off and nearly caused an accident?
Yeah, that happened maybe a month or so ago, actually.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. When that happened, what was your reaction?
Um, well, it's funny because, 10 years ago, that's something that would drive me insane. And I would get really pissed, and I would, honk the horn, and just, I'd want to go after them and cut them off. And just, I had a lot of road rage, and it was terrible. And so now, I was like, I got upset. I'm like, what are you doing? You almost caused an accident. But I'm like, okay, well, but I'm not going to let that ruin my day. I'm just going to,
Good for you.
I can't,
yeah, a lot of, well,
it is what it is. And I was just grateful. Right. I focused on the fact that we did not get into an accident,
You've had a lot of personal growth with that. And I'm going to guess prior to this, we'll go back those years ago, many of us still live in this kind of world. We're, minding our own business, some jerk cuts us off, and we are so enraged that if we don't go after them, we're so enraged, and we just cannot believe this jerk nearly did this. That when we get to our destination, somebody will say, well, how was your trip? Or, oh, you're a few minutes late. And we just start reliving the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we bring ourselves back into that same irritating, frustrated, enraged, anger state, right?
Mm-hmm.
We just keep reliving it over and over and over. Well, that's just an example of when life happens and chaos happens, we oftentimes can just keep reliving it. You've heard that expression, misery loves company?
Yes.
Well, those are the people that are just keep reliving the bad stuff over and over and over and over, not realizing that this energy, they're just attracting more and more and more to them. And they can't understand why life is so miserable, and I'm so frustrated, and I'm so unhealthy, or, it just goes on and on and on. It's these simple little things that they have to be aware of, that it happened and it was back there, and you're living here today. So what are we going to do today?
Mm-hmm.
Allow people to be present. And that's some of the lessons that I've learned. Just learn to be present. Deal with the things that you have absolute control over. Accept the things that you can't. And, look forward to the future of what can I do differently to improve my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. it's so tempting to kind of stay in that place, and to have that, to be upset, and to really let these things continue to affect you, and just stay stuck, in that misery. Like, I mean, there's something about it that is, just it's almost easy sometimes to do that. But if we
That's the
can,
word. It's easy.
right? It's hard. It's harder to say, no, I'm going to put an end to this. I'm going to change this pattern. That's harder to
Mm-hmm.
do. But if you can get yourself to do it, then you're going to feel better ultimately.
Absolutely. And you made a huge point right there. It's easy. It's so much easier to blame somebody else, to play the victim. And you know why? Because it's so much easier to not have to take responsibility for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the principles that I work with in my, I talk about my book. So much easier, but we need to all be more responsible for what's going on. Just like I said before, when I took responsibility and said, I'm the one that made the decision to skip school that day. Nobody dragged me out of there. Nobody made me go to this place. Nobody made me hop in the passenger seat of this truck. Those were all my own free will.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to own it and take responsibility for, what I could and accept the things that I had no control over, which were, hey, I was the passenger. He was driving. We did hit a tree, and life is forever changed.
Mm-hmm.
So what am I going to do? Am I going to live that way and go, oh, I hurt, I'm miserable, I'm in pain, I can't do this and I can't do that? Because honestly, that would probably be easier. Many of those days that I've had, it would be so much easier. But I tell you one thing, it wouldn't have been nearly as fun.
Mm-hmm. And, I think for anyone who struggles with that, I mean, I get that, taking responsibility can seem scary. But if you can kind of, look at it from the perspective of it actually being an opportunity for growth and to get yourself to a better place where you're going to be happier, be more fulfilled, I think that makes it a little bit easier to actually go down that path.
Yes, that will make it much easier. Unfortunately, many people don't even have that perspective.
Mm-hmm. And that's the
And
word. It's all about perspective.
yeah.
I've been learning a lot about perspective lately, and I realize, yeah, it's so important, And whenever I'm like, I find myself, kind of wallowing in something or wanting to play a victim, I just kind of ask myself, like, what's your perspective right now, and just check in on that, because it comes back to that so much.
Absolutely. Well, there's so many ways that we can look at. We want to look at things from, why am I looking at it this way? What's caused me to feel this way? And if you're in a situation where, actually, it's easier if I explain perspective. I heard this really great story. Do you mind? Can I share that with you right quick?
Sure.
Well, I think a lot of us have been in this situation where you're going back to the car, right? And being frustrated about somebody driving. Maybe you're behind somebody and they're driving way under the speed limit. That can be just as frustrating too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you have a place to be. You want to go somewhere, and you're on this road, and you just can't get behind. You're behind this driver who's poking around. So next thing you know, you start getting more irritated, agitated, frustrated, anger and rage. Right? It just keeps going on and on and on. Well, we're coming from a perspective of, I'm the driver behind you and I want to get from point A to point B. Get out of my way. But what we never really take time to think about is what's going on with the driver in front of us. You have no idea. That driver may have just found out they have cancer. That driver may have just lost a loved one, right?
Yeah, you don't know.
You have no idea what is causing that driver to drive so slow, to be spaced out. You really don't know for an absolute fact that they're just a very insecure, slowpoke driver. But yet we perceive that because I can drive, you must be able to drive, and what is your problem, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if we just allow ourselves a chance to step back and say what's going on from the other person, it helps us with that perspective and make, better choices.
Mm-hmm. So, Rhonda, let me ask you, like, are there things that kind of help you to stay in this more positive mindset?
Things that help me. You mean as far as things that I read, things that I do?
Yeah, any other, tools that you use that help you to, to be in the place that you're in today?
Well, I'm glad you asked because for the longest time I didn't really think too much about that. And I realized, again, it's all about perspective, right? I had to really take a look at where I am in life. And when we're in our 20s and 30s, this perspective may not sound so impactful. But I had to ask myself, about life at the end of life, where, when I'm on my, I hate to say it, when I'm on my deathbed, what am I going to look back at? Am I going to be glad I did or I wish I had?
Mm.
Because truly, we are here, and I think of, our each decade is a period of that hourglass of sand, right? That's going through.
Mm-hmm.
And once that has gone through, once your 20s are over, they're over. You can't go back and get them again. When your 30s are over, you can't go back and be 30 something again. And when you put these looking glasses on, going, I can't go back, and I can't, but I can learn from maybe my mistakes. What did I do that I wish I hadn't done, and do things differently so that my next decade or my next 5 years can be more happier, more joyful. I can appreciate them more. There's more value in it. It really, for me, is just about, the perspective of what am I really grateful for? What am I excited about? What am I proud of? And if I can't really answer a lot of that, I, do whatever I can in my control to start making adjustments so that when I look back 6 months from now or a year from now or 5 years, I can go, pretty cool. Look what I did. Look what I tried, right? And, I write about this in my book too, in my programs about growing. Life is growing, right? You're either growing or you're dying. If you look at nature, it has to be nurtured. A flower, you plant a seed, it sprouts up, it blossoms, but it needs sunshine, water, fertilizer. And if it's put in the shade for too long, it withers. And oftentimes we as people get put in too much shade, or we're not watered enough, and we start withering. And that's when we start doing this mundane day in, day out. We're just kind of living and existing. It's just a perspective on life. For me, that's really the best, I don't want to say advice, but to offer a new perspective so that somebody listening can go, you know what? I might have gone through some really cruddy, crappy things, but you know what? I really don't want it to be this way forever, and it doesn't have to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hope that helps.
Yeah. So Rhonda, how are you doing today? And are there things that you're still struggling with?
Well, I think I'm doing absolutely flipping fantastic these days. There have been many struggles, many challenges, gone through physical, mental, emotional, gone through many other things since that car wreck. But with that being said, just using the tools and techniques that I've shared with you today has really allowed me to personally grow and feel more empowered than I've ever felt, and truly, truly loving life, even with the chaos that happened just before you and I connected today. Because it's just part of life. It's gonna happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, it's gonna be what you make of it, what you decide to make of it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I love my life right now. Very excited about the impact that I have an opportunity to have with people now.
Yeah, well, that's great. And tell us more about what it is you do today.
Well, I just love working with my mompreneurs or women entrepreneurs. Those are my two main groups, because I have a passion to enlighten them or empower them about who they are and why they do what they do, because I believe that knowledge really is power. And when I can teach a woman these skills and how to make a positive mind shift, she actually not only empowers her own life, but she also has this ripple effect on her family. And I believe the work that I'm doing is really having a positive effect on two generations, the women I'm currently working with and their upcoming generation, because they are watching mom have self-confidence, gain self-esteem, build their communication skills, and have self-worth. And when they can pass that on to the next generation, I feel like I'm kind of doing double duty to make that impact, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. So I wanted to ask you, so your brand is A Balanced Life for You. What does a balanced life mean to you, Rhonda?
A balanced life for me really is about ebb and flow. There's no such thing as perfectly balanced, but if you think about it, to stand upright when we walk, you can kind of tilt to the right, tilt to the left. Ultimately, though, you want to be upright and so you can go straight, correct?
Right.
Another analogy is somebody on a tight wire, the high wire. They have to have some kind of balance. They're going to go to the right, they're going to go to the left, put one foot in front of the other. Sometimes they're going to go back a little bit. But ultimately, they have to have some kind of balance to get from the beginning of that to the end. So a balanced life for you really represents a very whole and holistic approach to life, because we're not just in the physical form. We're mental, emotional, and spiritual in the physical form. So when I work with clients, and whether it be one-on-one or through programs or workshops or whatever, I take a very holistic approach to helping them gain control of their physical world and their mental and emotional world, like communications, relationships, their money and finance, recreation and playtime, and of course, service and contribution, which so many of us forget that we live in this world of duality. So if we're going to receive, we must be willing to give, right?
Mm-hmm.
So so a balanced life for you is about all these different elements within life. It's like this gigantic umbrella to help you in the fullest sense of the word, for you, a balanced life for you, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I think it's so important. And those analogies that you gave there, like you were talking about, walking on the tightrope, and yeah, and like what's coming up for me is if you don't have your balance, like you're gonna fall, right? And so it's so important to have that balance so that you can continue, to move forward.
Well, I was a speaker for a workshop not long ago for an international speaking thing, and when I was talking about balance, I also referred to this as we see it in nature too. There has to be there's ebb and flow within nature. And almost everything we look at has an ebb and a flow, but ultimately it needs to have some kind of balance to it.
Mm-hmm.
Or else in nature, if we don't help conservation-wise, things can get out of control, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's everywhere that we look. And that's the one thing I just always like to bring up. It's not balance is in the set of scales, like it's perfectly balanced, because there is no such thing as perfectly balanced.
Mm-hmm.
Your diet has to be balanced, right? If you eat too much of this or too much of that, you can essentially end up being overweight and obese. If you have too much of something else, you can end up with a heart attack. So we have to have balance within our diet too.
Yeah, balance is a part of everything.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for letting me explain that.
Yeah, no, thank you for explaining it. So I want to ask you the final question that I have for you today, and that is, given what you know now, if you could go back to when you were going through your tough times and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
I think it would probably be just don't quit, don't give up, and don't give in.
Yeah. Yeah, so like we were saying, like not always easy, but so important if we want to be able to get out of whatever we're going through.
Yeah, tomorrow's another day.
Mm-hmm.
And that is truly a gift. Tomorrow is another day. So if today you wake up and it's just not going the way that you want it to go, it's going to come to an end. The sun's going to set and the sun's going to rise again. And as long as the sun rises again, you have another day that you can make different choices and have a new experience. Sometimes the experience or the traumatic experiences can last for longer periods of time than sunrise to sunset. But do know that each day it's an opportunity for you to heal, to let go of the things that you have no control over, and to become the person, be the very best person that you want to be. And that's really what's going to make that difference in 10, 20, 30 years from now.
So true.
Just being
yes.
fully aware. Yeah, just being aware and making those choices that you are going to be excited and proud of in the future.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, Rhonda, before I let you go, what is the best way for people to connect with you or learn more about what you have going on?
Well, they can go to my website. That's a great place, which is www.abalancedlifeforyou, all spelled out. And if you'd like to get my ebook, it's Chaos to Clarity. You can pick that up directly at lifedirectionswithrhonda.com, and it's Rhonda with an H. So either one, you can find the free ebook, and it will allow you a chance to connect with any of my book, my podcast, my work. Shoot me an email at Rhonda@abalancedlifeforyou, and I'd love to hear from you.
All right, that sounds good. And I'll have all that linked up on your show notes page. And other than that, I just want to thank you for coming on here today and for sharing your story with us. And, I like how we spent a lot of time talking about, mindset and perspective, and hopefully that's been helpful for those listening. So thank you for sharing all that with us.
Well, thank you, Melissa, for having me. And my wish today is that whoever listens to this, you're in the right place at the right time, and you're gonna be just fine.
All right. Well, I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks for listening to the show today. This has been the Grass Gets Greener podcast, episode 134. Go to thegrassgetsgreener.com/Rhonda C to find the links mentioned during this episode or to leave a comment. So I hope you enjoy this episode and can see how our beliefs and our perspective can really make a difference in what we're going through. It's all about how, we can't change what has happened to us, but we can choose how we go forward and what we do with it. It can be so easy to stay in that victim mindset, but when we can get ourselves to do the work that will create change, we're going to feel so much better for it. We're going to feel empowered. And, while you didn't deserve what happened to you, you do deserve a better future. And I hope that this episode has inspired you and given you hope for that. And be sure to come back for the next episode. That's looking to be another update one. So I hope you'll be excited for that. And also head over to the website to grab a free copy of the Top 10 Strategies Guide for Survivors. In it, you'll find the top 10 most common strategies my podcast guests have used for overcoming the effects of past trauma. It's a great place to get started if you're looking for some strategies that can help you in your healing, as they have helped my guests. And you can find that at thegrassgetsgreener.com/guide or also on the show notes page. So be sure to grab that if you haven't yet. And lastly, don't forget to head over to iTunes or Stitcher to leave the show a rating and review so that we can reach as many survivors as possible. And, as always, have hope.